3 months ago, I began the difficult process of rebuilding my engine, a Chevy 350 with nearly 400 horsepower that I'm going to put in my 1975 Camaro and give away to my mother for all the things that she's done for me over the years. Naive and trying to save money, I took to eBay, looking for the cheapest parts that I could get my hands on, and with not as much knowledge as I should have about rebuilding engines, I looked for a kit of parts that was pre-put together that would make it easy for me to rebuild my engine. Now, I'd heard about the rumors about the quality of some eBay sellers, but I figured by 2023, there couldn't have been that much issue with buying parts off eBay. Well, I was wrong. I purchased a parts kit on eBay called the PSM Power Package. It included an Edelbrock intake manifold and its bolts, PSM aluminum cylinder heads and their bolts, Manley valves, springs, an Edelbrock 2102 cam, Howard's cam push rods, a timing chain, and a full Felpro gasket kit. At the time that I bought it, I couldn't have been more excited, but this kit led me down a path of pain, months of wasted time, and $1,700 of wasted money. A month later, the parts arrived and I began assembly of the engine. Super excited, I decided to film my progress on everything and upload it here to YouTube. And by uploading those videos, I quickly grew a dedicated viewership of people who were hobbyist engine builders, expert engine builders, and just people who liked learning. And that audience is the reason that I am able to make this video today. So I'll get back to them in a second. Now, the problems with this kit started to show themselves when I was installing the heads onto the block. And the head bolts for these PSM heads started breaking in half with less than half of the torque required by the spec to build the engine. I immediately reached out to the seller on eBay and requested a refund, at least partially, for the bolts that kept breaking, because I was gonna have to spend $87 on ARP bolts to get those replaced. The seller unfortunately denied my request for any sort of partial refund and said that they would instead send me a new kit of the exact same bolts. Obviously, I didn't trust those, so I declined the offer for replacement, and instead I again requested a refund, which I was left with no response. But I continued to push through the engine build, working on it as much as I could on weekends over the next 2 months. I got it fully assembled and excited to hear it run for the first time. I hooked up fuel and battery and gave it its first crank. Only for it to lock up and not run at all. And I was devastated. So I reached out to my community that I had built here on YouTube for some help. And a couple people reached out to me to offer some advice, including the hero of this build, Michael, who reached out to me on Facebook and offered me some insight on the kit that I had bought off of eBay, informing me about the horrible reality that some eBay sellers just sell parts with brand names on them that are just junk. Now, I had never even heard this rumor before, but after looking into it more, I've heard report after report after report of people dealing with the exact same thing. So Michael and I proceeded to work on figuring out what was wrong with my build for about 2 weeks, looking through every single piece and part. And we eventually found a buffet of issues ranging from the crankshaft bearings to the valves to the springs and even the camshaft itself. Now, the springs for the crankshaft were from a different kit, but they were sold by the exact same seller on eBay. Now, the problem with the bearings was that they were undersized. Even though they were marked as standard, they didn't have enough oil clearance and they were causing way too much friction to let the engine turn over. So thinking that this could be the big problem of why it didn't start, I just ordered new bearings, cut my losses, and was excited to hear the engine run again. But unfortunately, I was wrong yet again. Because while I was replacing the bearings and waiting for parts to show up, Michael was doing some research on the heads that I had bought. Now, these heads again were advertised with Manley valves in them, and were supposed to work totally fine with the camshaft that I was given. However, after some research, we found out that the valve, springs, and camshaft were all much less than ideal for what should be going in this engine. So I disassembled the heads, and as I was taking everything apart, I found serial numbers on the valves. And those serial numbers led me back to a Chinese export service that specializes in used car parts. And used they were. Because as I took this apart, I started finding things like carbon chunks on the valves that were supposedly brand new. So not only were they not the manly valves that were advertised to me, but they were also used out of some other who knows what. So at this point, I put my foot down and I was not willing to let this scammer win and take my money anymore. Plus, I had already spent too much money fixing the problems that they had caused me at this point. So I reached back out to them on eBay and I said, listen, this kit is trash and I want a full refund for my time and the horrible parts that you sent me. They almost immediately responded and said there's nothing wrong with the kit and doubled down on the fact that manly valves were in the heads, all while I was holding the fake valves in my hand at the time. So instead, I escalated the problem to eBay directly, and I said, hey, listen, here's what's going on. And they almost immediately sent me right back to the seller saying, you need to request a refund from the seller directly. So I knew they were going to be of no help to me whatsoever. So I did the last thing that I could possibly think of, which was to reach out to my credit card company and file a fraud claim. Now, this is usually reserved for much bigger deals, but at this point I had no other option. Weeks went by with no update from my credit card company, and I decided to continue working on the engine, refusing to be stopped by the scammers that were trying to take my money, because I was determined to finish this build one way or another. Eventually, I received an update from my credit card company. We have reviewed your claim and the seller, eBay, has provided us information that shows you did not follow their policy of requesting a refund prior to claiming a fraudulent charge. Now at this point, I was devastated. I had nothing left to do. I thought that I was surely out the $1,700. There was no further steps I could take, and it completely crushed the motivation that I had to work on this project. I took a few days to reflect on what had just happened and reevaluate my budget for working on this car. But I had nothing but disdain for the heap of metal that was sitting in my garage and just couldn't put any work in. Then, out of nowhere, I received a follow-up email from my credit card company saying that the decision had been made, but I could reopen the dispute if I had more information to share, which included anything from documents to images and, you guessed it, video. So I proceeded to go through every communication I had with the seller, every piece of feedback I got from a machine shop, every single piece of information I got from my viewers, my own detective work with the serial codes, and even sent them copies of the videos of me assembling the engine. And then I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And about 3 weeks later, I received a phone call from my credit card company asking for a more detailed explanation of the problem. Because again, eBay was already ready to claim that I had never requested a refund. So I shared everything I could with them. Half an hour on the phone with my credit card company, giving every detail of the situation in hopes to tip the scales of justice in my favor one last time. They politely thanked me for the information, and I went back to waiting for another 2 weeks. And finally, almost nearly 2 months after my initial dispute of this charge, I received an email from them saying that the results of the dispute had been decided. I felt nothing but panic and anxiety as I opened the email, but I did so anyway, to be greeted with a message that read, "As a result of our investigation, we have credited your account. The goods received were damaged or not as described. This adjustment can be found on your upcoming statement." So we won! We won! I got my money back. The full $1,700 has been refunded to my account. I've taken that entire lump sum of money and invested it into better, proper parts directly from the manufacturers. And while I likely won't be bringing much business back to eBay, I definitely hope that it pushes them to take the people on eBay a little more seriously when they claim that something is not as it should be. And thanks to my proof, the help from my viewers, the determination to not back down from this issue and let myself be scammed, we've had a huge win for me and the channel, and I think the car community as a whole, because this is a huge problem that has plagued the car world for a long, long time. So like I said, I've taken all the money and put it back into the car. I've bought new parts, better parts. It will run better. It will run with more power now, and I can rest easy knowing that it's done right. So if you guys want to see the end result and the final build of my project engine, I highly recommend subscribing and turning that notification bell on so you can see the next couple videos as we get our parts back from the machine shop, as we install everything back into the engine, and as we get to hear our beautiful 50-year-old Chevy 350 run for the first time in over 40 years. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the help in resolving this. I couldn't have done it without you guys giving me the advice that you have. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm so glad to finally say that this eBay scammer series is now done and over with. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you want to see the initial videos that are in this series, I'll have them linked down in the description below. But other than that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.